Once the two punks were gone, and Nicholson had his drink and some ice for his head, he noticed they'd cleaned him out of Johnny Walker, only to leave a Dalmore 62 sitting right there on the bar. It was a $400 bottle, and seemed as ominous a sign as anything else. If these two losers were onto him, then everything was unraveling faster than he'd thought possible. Now, who the hell was Johnny Tucci?
Chapter 40.
For Suarez and Overton, every exchange with Zeus was a dead drop. No face-to-face meetings ever, by mutual agreement with whoever was actually paying their fees. They went into the suite at Blacksmith Farms after him, sanitized the space, and took away whatever needed taking away, including the bodies. Just before dawn, their no-profile G6 bumped along the familiar dirt track in the backwoods of Virginia. Its rear end was riding a little low because of the weight in the trunk. "Let me ask you this," Suarez said to his partner. "He's obviously filthy rich. Why does he risk it? What is he, completely crazy?" "On some level, sure." "On some level? How about 24/7, 365? He's crazier than a shithouse rat on speed. How does he get away with it? How?" "Well, for one thing, do you know who he is, Suarez?" "You're right. I don't. But somebody has to know. Somebody has to stop him, eventually." "What can I tell you? Welcome to the wackadoo world of the rich and famous. Can you say wood chipper?"
Chapter 41.
Remy Williams didn't trust these two guys at all. Never had, not from the start of the contract. When they pulled up to the cabin and didn't even get out of the car, he knew something was up. Something more than the usual dirtbag routine. "How's it going, fellas?" He shuffled on over like the piece of white trash he was supposed to be. "What have you got for me this time?" "To a female." The driver looked up, though not quite into his eyes. What was this? Did the Latino have a conscience? "One of them has a bullet in the chest. You'll see." "Oh, yeah? What'd you shoot her for?" "I don't know. Maybe because we're still chasing down the last one who ran off." The guy was baiting him. Remy could tell, but he wasn't sure why, or really what these murders were all about. He was just a cog, didn't have all the pieces. Figured probably no one did. Like JFK. Like RFK. Hell, like OJ. "Seems to me you shot the last one, too," he said, playing along. "Maybe she didn't run off at all. Maybe just be lying out in those woods somewhere, turning into mush as we speak. Could have just been found by hikers." "Yeah, maybe." The ex-agent took a deep breath, starting to get a little showy with his aggravation. "Listen, if you could just clean out the trunk, we'll be on our merry way." Remy scratched at his crotch. Little overkill, maybe. And then shuffled around to the back of the car. The driver popped the trunk for him. "Jesus, look at this." The two bodies were double-wrapped in black poly sheeting and sealed with packing tape. These guys were pros at what they did. He had to give them that much. But who the hell was hurting these girls in the first place? What was the big picture here? Who was the killer? He dragged both packages out of the trunk and onto the canvas tarp he'd already spread. His tools were laid out on a big hickory stump, and there was an extra gallon of gas next to the chipper. "Which one did you say was shot?" he called over to the spooks. "Tall one, left chest. What a waste. Girl was a real looker." He rolled her over and slit the plastic down the middle, pushing just hard enough with the tip of his Bowie knife to leave a thin red trail in its wake. When he pulled back the wrapper, he found a small crater just above the very well-formed left breast. The body was still warm, in the 90s or high 80s, dead only a few hours at the most. "Okay, got it. You want me to pull the slug, or do you care?" "Pull it. Get rid of it." "All righty." "Done. Anything else?" "Yeah. Close the trunk." A few seconds later, the two smart-ass bastards were gone. Distrust aside, Remy didn't mind their arrogance, mostly because he knew it worked in his favor. Probably never even occurred to these two how expendable they were, or how vulnerable. In fact, he'd already done a good bit of the work for them when they erased their own identities. Now they were just a couple of spooks, and Remy knew as well as anyone that when the time came, there was nothing easier to make disappear than a ghost. He could do that. Hell, he'd done it before. Made a career of it, actually. He unwrapped the second girl, another real looker. Seemed like maybe she'd been strangled and bitten. He massaged the girl's lukewarm breasts, played around a little bit more, then took the two of them up the hill to the chipper. What a waste was right. Who the hell would do such a thing? Somebody even crazier than he was?
Chapter 42. I had another clandestine meeting with Ned Mahoney Saturday afternoon, this time at a busy parking garage on M Street in Georgetown. As I pulled in, I couldn't help thinking about those deep throat scenes in All the President's Men, the book and the movie. There was a definite cloak and dagger thing happening here. Why was that? What in hell was going on? Ned was already waiting when I got out of the car. He handed me a manila folder with the Bureau's seal on it. Inside, I found some notes and a collection of photos, copied 2 to a page. "What's this?" "Renata Cruz and Catherine Tenencourt," he said. "Both missing, presumed dead." Each picture showed one of the girls in several locations around town, with a variety of mostly white, much older men. "Is that David Wilkie?" I asked, pointing at someone who looked very much like the current chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Ned nodded. "That's David Wilkie, all right. Both women have powerful men as regular clients, which is why we've been tracking them to begin with. Catherine Tenencourt at least worked at the club out in Virginia." I didn't say a word, just stared at Mahoney. "I know exactly what you're thinking," he said. "Might as well break out the legislative directory while we're at it." This whole thing was getting more insidious by the minute. There was no way to track this killer or this network, if that's what we were looking at, without exposing all kinds of very dirty laundry in the process. A lot of innocent family members' lives would be ruined, and that was just the start of it. House and Senate majorities, not to mention presidential elections and governorships, had been lost over a lot less than this. No one would be going down without a fight either. I already had a bad taste of that from internal affairs. Anyone who thinks that cops look forward to these sensational, career-making cases has never been in the middle of one. "Jesus, Ned, it's like waiting for a hurricane to happen right here in D.C. More like running after one. Looking for trouble," he said. "A real Category 5 shitstorm. Don't you just love Washington?" "Actually, I do. Just not right at this minute." "So, listen, Alex." His voice went serious again. "The Bureau's all over this. It's about to go pop. I totally understand if you want to back off, and if you do, now would be a good time. Just hand the envelope full of goodies back." I was a little surprised by the offer. I thought Ned knew me a lot better than that, which meant, of course, that this offer carried a serious warning. "Does that mean you're ready to hit the club out in Virginia?" I asked him. "I'm waiting on the ex parte right now." "And?" Ned grinned, and if I'm not mistaken, he looked just a little relieved. "And you should probably leave your phone on when you go home tonight. I'll be calling." Chapter 43. The good news was I got to have a nice dinner with the family. I even got to spend some time hanging out with the kids afterward, just before all hell would probably break loose, probably like nothing I'd ever experienced before. It all depended on who was at the private club tonight. Janny had been teaching Ali to play Sorry, one of the most boring games in the universe, but I liked playing just about anything with the two of them. I goofed around between my turns, stealing pieces off the board and telling old jokes to Ali. Things like, "Why is 6 afraid of 7? "Because 7, 8, 9, Janny cackled. She loved to be the spoiler, and Ali was a perfect audience. The boy just loves to laugh. He's the least serious of my 3 kids by far. Nana sat off to the side, watching us over the top of 1,000 Splendid Suns, one of the books she'd been tearing through these days. She and Bree had settled into a tentative partnership, with Bree slowly asserting herself around the house and Nana learning she could afford to let go of a few things she'd always controlled, like how to load the dishwasher. It was all good until the phone rang. Usually I expect the kids to put up an immediate stink when that happens. "Don't answer it, Daddy," had become a common refrain around our house. So when both of them just looked away, waiting for the inevitable, I felt even worse. I checked the ID. It was Mahoney, as promised. "I'm sorry. I really do have to take this," I said to Ali and Janny. Their silence was loud and clear as I went out to the hall to answer. "Ned?" "Where go, Alex? There's a Holiday Inn off exit 72 in Arlington. I can meet you in the parking lot if you come now. Right now." Chapter 44. It was called Operation Coitus Interruptus, which only goes to prove that there are some people in the FBI with a sense of humor. Ned's full team had convened at a small farm in Culpeper County, about an hour and a half west of D.C., and not far from Shenandoah National Park. It was a strange, foreboding mix. Mahoney and his co-case agent Renee Victor, 6 HRT agents, 3 crisis negotiators from the Tactical Support Branch, and a 10-man FBI SWAT team. I'd been expecting an all-HRT team, but I wasn't concerned in the least. FBI SWAT has some of the best tactical units in the world. This was going to be quite a show. There was also a rep from Virginia State Police, who had 2 collection wagons on standby, and me. I'm not sure what strings Ned had to pull to have me there, but I appreciated it, and I knew that he figured I would add value. We all gathered around the tailgate of someone's pickup for a quick briefing from the big guy. "There will be some heavy hitters inside, but for us, it's going to be SOP all around," Ned told the group. "I want SWAT in first, then agents, and I want all exits secure at all times. You should be prepared for any scenario, including sexual situations and even violent resistance. I'm not expecting the latter, but it's possible. Anything is. The idea is to work fast and safe and to clear this place out as cleanly as we can." Surveillance showed that the main house had entrances on the north, south, and east sides. Mahoney divided us into 3 units accordingly. I'd be going in the front door with him. There were also several outbuildings which were supposed to be empty, at least tonight. I couldn't help wondering about the kinds of parties held in them. Before we left, Ned gave me an FBI jacket and a new Aramid vest from the back of his car. The vest was lighter than anything I'd used before, which was okay, since we were hiking in from a couple of miles away. It took 45 minutes to get there through pretty thick woods and brush. After the first mile or so, we switched to night vision only, those with goggles leading those without. All conversation dropped off at that point, except for the occasional radio exchange between Mahoney and the SWAT commander. The main house came up quickly over a steep rise, all 3 stories of it. We hung just out of sight, about 75 yards off the front. Ned sent SWAT out to do a quick 360, and I borrowed a pair of binoculars for a better look while we waited for the action to start. It was a really large limestone mansion. There's no other word for it. And the driveway was a virtual car show tonight. Mercedes, Rolls, Bentley, even a vintage Lamborghini and a red Ferrari. Tall mullioned windows ran along the first floor, which was well lit inside, but there were no people that I could see. Presumably the action was taking place upstairs, where all the windows were dark or at least shaded. Was this where Caroline had been killed? The thought came over me like a shroud. Was it also where her body had been so horribly desecrated? For that matter, were we about to crack open somebody's butcher shop or just a rich man's playground? It was a strange feeling to have no idea what to expect. Word finally came back to